easy being a starving student. My first semester in college, I struggled to pay my way through school. I had taken out student loans, but they barely covered the cost of classes and books. Unable to afford student housing, I was forced to find a tiny studio apartment a few miles away from school. With my heavy class load, I had to find a job that would work around my school schedule. As I looked through online job openings, I came across the perfect position: overnight security at the mall. The location was ideal, only 10 minutes away from my apartment. The pay was really good too. $20 an hour for 8 hours of work, 4 days a week. Fingers crossed I filled out the application. I doubted I would get it. The job required at least 5 years of security experience. Unfortunately, the only other job I had was at the local pizza place. I finished the application, shut down my laptop, and went to bed. The following day was a Sunday, and I didn't expect to hear anything back so soon, if I heard back at all. I woke up to 3 emails from the mall's HR department regarding my application. The first email thanked me for applying. The second told me more details about the position, and the third gave me HR's phone number and asked me to call to set up an interview. I couldn't believe what was happening. I was so excited about my new job prospect. I called the number, and just like that, I had an interview Monday evening with the head of security, James. Monday evening came, and my interview went really, really well. James would be my supervisor. He was a heavyset older man with a head full of bright white hair. I was surprised when he told me that he was only in his mid-40s. We sat and talked for an hour before he asked me if I would accept the position. I tried to be professional and hid my excitement as I took it. As I said before, it was $20 an hour for an 8-hour shift, 4 days a week. All I would be doing is monitoring the mall via CCTV after the stores closed, occasionally walking the grounds to make sure everything was good. I would even be able to do some studying while I was on the clock. I would start the following night. I showed up for my first shift at 9 p.m. I had some time after my last class to go home, take a nap, shower, and get dressed. I was happy that my uniform fits so well. I'm a somewhat hefty guy, and I have issues with dress shirts with buttons. I couldn't hide my excitement. I didn't bring a lot of homework with me. I knew that there would be a lot to learn about checking the cameras, learning the layout of the mall itself, etc. Even though I lived so close, I had never been inside the mall. I had always bought everything I needed online. I was surprised the mall was so empty. I mean, I shouldn't have been. It's the age of Amazon and eBay. And with the quarantine, a lot of physical stores lost business and were forced to shut down. I figured that this was why the only things still open here were a theater, a handful of food kiosks, a bookstore, and a sporting goods store. As we made our way around the perimeter, I paid close attention to everything James told me. He told me to make sure all the stoves were off when I patrolled the food court. I had to make sure that all of the gates were down and locked tight. As we made our way back to the office, James gave me one last instruction. Stay away from sub-hallway E6, under penalty of termination. I hesitated for a moment, waiting to hear the reason why. When that moment passed, I spoke up and asked why. There's nothing down there, so there's no reason for you to go there. Not wanting to push the issue, even though my curiosity was piqued, I dropped the subject. He proceeded to show me how to operate the CCTVs and how to dial out the phone system if there was an emergency. All in all, it was so simple. I knew that I was going to love it here. The following night would be my first night working alone. I remembered every instruction by heart. Stoves were off, gates were pulled down and locked, no customers were left. All the staff had been let out and the doors locked behind them. I made myself comfortable in the office and started to read a few chapters for my literature class. As I read, I remembered what James told me about sub-hallway E6. I checked the camera monitors to see what's so important about that area, only to find out there were no cameras down there. Part of me wanted to go down there. The other part didn't want to put my job in jeopardy. I tried to concentrate on my book, but my mind kept wandering. I closed the book and walked up to the huge map of the mall that hung on the office wall. Suddenly I realized sub-hallway E6 wasn't even on the map. All the other corridors were on there. I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to know what was down there. I left the office and made my way to E6. I stood there for a moment. Did I really want to do this and risk my perfect job? My curiosity got the best of me. I slipped through the door only to find the area completely empty, except for one door at the end of the long corridor. I made my way slowly and quietly down the hall. As I finally made it to the door, I stopped and put my ear to the door. I couldn't believe what I heard on the other side. Human voices. It sounded like there was a party on the other side of the door. I heard laughter and singing, but I watched as every single mall employee left the building hours ago. There couldn't be, no, shouldn't be, anyone there. Part of me wanted to just turn around and go back to the office. But what if I did and there were people there? What if they damaged the property or stole something and I didn't do anything about it? I'd lose my job for sure. After a few moments of hesitation, I pulled out my phone and hit 911. My finger ready to hit send. I slowly reached for the doorknob. The door was unlocked. I slowly opened the door and peeked my head inside. Nobody was there. Well, nobody human at least. The room was filled with dozens of broken, faceless mannequins. I let out a nervous laugh. I was so happy that no one was there. But where did the voices come from? It must have just been my ears playing tricks on me. As I turned to leave, I heard soft whispers and giggles. I stopped in my tracks. Did I really just hear that? I turned around again. The mannequins were in different positions than they were in when I first came into the room. I watched in horror as they moved and crawled towards me, their limbless, headless, faceless, humanoid forms starting to call my name and reaching for me. I was petrified. I ran out of the door and down the hall. I could hear the sound of wood scraping across the floor, the demonic laughter. I made it to the door that led back to the mall lobby. I barricaded it, putting everything I could in front of the door to keep monsters at bay. I stood there for a moment, trying to collect myself, when a noise behind me made me jump. There was a loud banging coming from all directions. Mannequins were banging on the gate and display windows. There were hundreds of them. I took off running as creatures broke out of their stores. I ran as fast as I could towards the mall's main entrance. I burst outside and locked the door from the outside. I got into my car and I went home. I ran inside my apartment and locked the door. No job is worth dealing with those abominations. I'd rather work 3 jobs and have no social life than go back to that fucking mall. I texted James and told him I quit. I also had left a few textbooks behind, but those can be replaced. My sanity, on the other hand, cannot. Thank you so much for listening. Annie and I truly appreciate it. If you want to hear more stories like this, please leave a comment below and make sure to smash that like button. And as always, stay cool, stay spoopy, and support independent horror.